Hello, everyone. Appreciate you joining this session. So my name is Adam Boynton, and I work for Jamf. So some of you may be aware of Jamf. Some of you maybe this is the first time you're hearing or seeing Jamf. Bit about Jamf, we are probably the only company here that doesn't have AI in our tagline. We manage and secure Apple at work. So essentially we build software to enable you to manage your Mac, iPad, iPhone, and also Android devices at work scale. My role at Jamf is I work on our enterprise strategy. So what that means is I sit between our product and our customers. So I basically listen to what our customers are saying in terms of what they need our product to do to make sure that our product team are building and developing that, but also then feeding back what we're building and developing to our customers. But I'm also a father, so I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So when I try to explain to them what I do for work, obviously they want me to do something cool. And if I say I do enterprise strategy for a tech company, they're a bit like, so what I landed on in terms of what I do and what I told them I do is I tell people stories. Now, sometimes these stories are really interesting. Sometimes they're a little bit more sort of boring. So hopefully this is an interesting story for you today, and this is the story we're gonna tell and we're gonna talk about. So we're gonna focus on mobile devices, and we will go into everyone's favorite 2 letters in terms of AI and the kind of element that plays into mobile attacks specifically. But if we first just sort of look at the actual role of mobile in the enterprise today, because even a couple of years ago, a lot of the use cases for this device was just to be able to respond to emails on the go, or maybe you're sort of sending messages via Slack in between meetings or whatever it might be. And there might still be some of you that have users that just use that mobile device for that. But at Jamf, what we're seeing is a lot of organizations and businesses are really using this mobile device as a productivity driver. So whether that's companies in healthcare that are providing their patients with iPads or tablets to be able to provide sort of bedside care, aviation. Anyone who flew into London this week most likely got on a plane where all of the staff had iPads or tablets to kind of do the onboarding and anything like that. Or even in sort of engineering or construction where we're able to use these devices to complete jobs on the go. So there's a lot more innovative use cases for mobile rather than just being able to send and respond to messages on the go. I guess some numbers to back that up, and really what's quite interesting here is in the UK, 85% of enterprises have implemented some kind of BYOD policy. So even if you don't give your employees a company-issued mobile device, most of you are enabling them to access work data on a mobile device in some form. And even if you don't have a formal policy in place, 87% of employees are accessing company data through their personal phone in some form or the other anyway. So like I said, we are using these mobile devices for lots of different use cases in the enterprise, which is great. Productivity has gone up, but attackers have also noticed this. So if we look at some of the stats and data behind this, now, this is quite an interesting report, and this is from Google. So Google Threat Intelligence Group release a report most years, and last year's report, they found that 90% of multi-zero-day exploit chains. Now, not only is that a fun word a group of words to say in a row, but a multi-zero-day exploit chain is where an attacker or an attack group is chaining together several different zero-day exploits. So these are the sort of attacks that are very advanced, very sophisticated. They require a lot of know-how, but they also require a lot of financial money to kind of launch these attacks. Now, of these attacks that happened in 2024, 90% of them were targeting mobile. So what that means is if an attacker or an attack group is going to invest time, resources, and money into these type of sophisticated attacks on the mobile platform, it clearly shows they view that as a valuable asset to target. Now, if we look at some additional stats to kind of back that up even further, what's quite worrying here is 77% of organizations expect an AI attack to be successful against their mobile fleet over the next 12 months. Yet only 17% have any kind of adequate controls or feel they have the right protection against these type of attacks. So what that shows us is most of us expect an attack to happen, but we don't know how it's going to happen or how to protect ourselves from it. Now, when we talk about mobile attacks and mobile security, the most prevalent threat has been phishing, and this has been the case for several years. It's not necessarily the most severe, but the most prevalent. So at Jamf, we have an in-house team called the Jamf Threat Labs team. They're an excellent, we're really lucky to have them. They provide wonderful research, not only for Jamf, but also for the community. Each year they do a yearly report where they analyze a subset of genuine customer data to then provide a summary of what's happened over that course of the year. We found that when we, and these numbers are from this report, so we looked at about 150,000 mobile devices over a 12-month period. We found that across the organizations that were in it, 25% of those were hit by a mobile social engineering attack. Now, most mobile social engineering attacks are smishing. So this is SMS-based phishing attacks. So I'm sure everyone here has received like a text message, most likely from like your bank or from like a delivery service. We found that the top two domains that were phished from an enterprise point of view last year were Apple and Microsoft. So again, maybe show of hands, who's received a text message from Microsoft that they knew was a phishing message that probably wasn't from Microsoft? Yeah, a lot of us. Now, show of hands again, who clicked that link? Of course, no one here clicked that link. However, our research shows 1 in 10 users clicked a SMS phishing link when they were sent to them. And I guarantee you all work for organizations, you already know which one of your users are that 1 in 10. You can probably picture them in terms of they were the ones that would have clicked on that link. Now, it's not necessarily always their fault. It can be really quite tricky to spot a sort of phishing attack via SMS on a mobile device. Now, one of the reasons behind that and why attackers are now increasingly leveraging mobile as a method to do these social engineering attacks. First thing, users just, for whatever reason, are more trusting of SMS. Like I said, if I get a text message through from Microsoft and it's maybe giving me a 2FA code, or it's asking me to sort of log in to a service that I'm trying to log in on my laptop, I'm more likely to trust that than a dodgy email that somehow slips through the cracks. Well, also, when a user does click the link, it's a lot harder to spot. Just the simple fact that the screen size on this is a lot smaller. Like if you compare this to this, if I'm doing a phishing attack, if all I have to do is focus on getting that first part of the domain correct, if I can get the first part to say Microsoft.com, most likely the user isn't going to click to expand that full domain and see what they would see on this one. They're just going to see Microsoft.com. They're not going to see all the subdomains that follow. So again, it's tricky for the user to spot, but also it's why attackers generally target mobile. And also that last point's quite interesting, the kind of faster response. Like, we're all guilty of this. We've probably been walking around today, like responding to messages as we're going along. Again, it's a lot hard. Your guard is lowered in terms of actually detecting or protecting yourself against these attacks. Now, this is quite an interesting stat, and maybe the title isn't initially what it appears to be. But now at Jamf, as I mentioned, we are very big on Apple, and I am a self-proclaimed Apple iOS fanboy. So this doesn't mean that iOS is more vulnerable to phishing attacks than Android. What this means in terms of iOS facing 2 times the phishing rate, if you think about the typical profile of user that has a mobile device within your organization, those that are at the higher level, maybe your board level, your senior executives, most likely favor an iPhone compared to an Android, which is they are more likely to be targeted with these types of attacks, which is why they most likely receive that. But it's still an interesting stat nonetheless, whether that is the kind of full case behind it. So I've done pretty well to get 9 minutes in before putting AI on screen, but obviously the fact that 93% of organizations have users using Gen AI in some form or the other on mobile devices is, again, it's another attack vector that attackers may look to exploit. It's another surface that we as in the defense team need to be aware of and need to understand how our users are using these tools and maybe how attackers might be trying to exploit them, whether it's part of a social engineering attack or what's also quite interesting in terms of organizations seeing this as a data compromise or data leakage risk as well. So quite an interesting sort of thing to explore how that evolves over the next 12 months. Now, regarding mobile attacks, one of the feedback we often get when we talk about this is, okay, I don't hear loads of examples in the news about like big mobile or attacks that have happened because of a weakness on a mobile device. But there have been a couple over the last couple of years, which mobile was important part of the overall attack chain. So Scattered Spider, I don't know who's familiar with Scattered Spider. They're quite a well-known attack group. They were responsible for the data ransomware attack on Marks and Spencer last year, as well as other sort of retail organizations. Now, what was interesting about this attack was they didn't actually get into the systems through a really sophisticated zero-day malware. There was no 0 days, there was no malware involved. It was just a phone call to a third-party IT help desk that they then sort of leveraged to gain access to the systems and then move laterally within there. Another example, I don't know if we've got anyone from the Netherlands here. I myself have a lot of colleagues in the Netherlands. There was a data breach earlier this year, a company called Odido. 1/3 of the Dutch population had their passport numbers, credit card information, national insurance numbers just exposed on the internet, which has caused a lot of sort of fallout sort of problems since that has happened. Again, very similar in terms of how that attack worked compared to what Scattered Spider did. So if we look at how this sort of works, what they typically do is they will, if they can, if your organization structure is already online, then they'll try and access that. However, what we find is they're also doing is they're using LinkedIn to map your organization structure. Now, I use LinkedIn a lot. It's great for sort of productivity, like sharing the message, marketing, connecting with your peers, but also it's a gold mine for attackers, because on LinkedIn, I can see all of the employees that work at an organization. I can see their job role. If they're active on LinkedIn, I can also see sort of who they communicate with, who they engage with. What we've also started to notice is on LinkedIn, you can put your skills. So it's quite good for like your CV to be like, I've got a Salesforce qualification, tick, or Jamf, we do certification. So I've got a certification at Jamf. But what that also does is it tells the attacker, these are the technologies that this company uses. So they know, okay, they use Jamf or they use Salesforce. So if I want to do a phishing campaign against that organization, not only do I know the users that I can target, I also know what technologies they're using to then try and replicate as part of my phishing attack. So they can map out an organization structure, identify their target. What they then did in Scattered Spider's instance is they then impersonated someone from the IT help desk. They phoned the employees, pretended to be someone from the IT help desk, and got them to give their credentials over the phone. So they reset their credentials there and then, captured their genuine credentials, including MFA code, and then logged in using those legitimate credentials to the system. And then once they logged into the system, they moved laterally. Now, again, how they got onto the system, you can maybe argue in terms of like securing down who can access your systems or what, but the case here is that they gain access via legitimate credentials to the system and move laterally once they were in there. So that was all done before AI voice cloning really kind of was an available tool. And what I predict is that this is really going to kind of supercharge these types of attacks. Now, there are legitimate tools and full transparency. For the demo that I'm going to show you, I'm using 11 Labs. So I'm sure a few of you, if not all of you, are familiar with 11 Labs. It's a legitimate tool which a lot of businesses use for cloning voices or cloning even video clones. The kind of business reason for doing this is if you want your CEO to be the face of your company, but they're obviously a busy person, they maybe don't have time to always do these videos, you can record them once and then it will basically give a real lifelike video or voice of them. So you can kind of use that voice repeatedly. However, and to use 11 Labs, you need the consent of the person to whose voice you're cloning to do it. However, for this topic, I obviously did a lot of research. As you can imagine, there are a lot of tools that are not as legitimate that you can access on open source, dark web, from like different sort of services, different countries, where you're able to clone someone's voice through just sort of 10 seconds of audio. So if there's a video of someone speaking at an event like this and it's on YouTube, maybe I can access their voice through that method. Or if I just phone you up and if I can get you to speak for 10 seconds, ideally 30 seconds to a minute is the sweet spot, but even as short as 10 seconds, that's a pretty good sort of set of data I can then use to accurately clone your voice. It's really scary in terms of how easy it is to do this. So this is where it's going to be fun. I'm going to show you this. Now, hopefully the audio is working and you'll be able to hear this correctly. So let's run through an attack scenario. So first thing we need to do is we need to find our victim. So I'm going to use LinkedIn to map out the organization. I'm going to target Jamf, and I found my victim. So I'm going to go after this guy in terms of who I'm going to target. And if we look, oh, this idiot's put his phone number on LinkedIn. This is my genuine phone number, so please don't take pictures of this. Or if you do, and I get a funny phone call, I will not answer. So I've got his phone number. I've got his who I'm going to target. I now need to find someone from that company who I can maybe impersonate. Now, when we hear about deepfakes and voice cloning in the press, a lot of it is about celebrity deepfakes. People are worried that you can get the president or the prime minister looking like they're saying something which would obviously be not what they would say and kind of used against them. In a business sense, maybe you're worried about your CEO or someone very important in the organization being having their voice or image cloned and then saying something which could get you into some kind of PR trouble. However, what I'm also finding is attackers are looking at IT and IT help desk. If I, as a user, receive a phone call from Jamf CEO, I'm going to be immediately suspicious. Like, why are you calling me? Not just to say, hey, I heard your talk at InfoSec and it was amazing. You're probably like, it's unlikely they're going to do that. However, if my IT colleague, who I sit opposite from, by the way, and work with when I go into the office, if they give me a call and they're like, hey, we're just doing some testing, or like there's some security issue and you're our guinea pig, can you just help me out? I'm probably going to respond and trust that more than the CEO calling me. So I found my IT colleague. So this is Rob. He's an engineer at Jamf. He commented on one of my posts. So I know that they work together. I know that they interact and engage. So now I need to find Rob's voice. Now I could try and phone Rob, but I just go on YouTube. I search Jamf, Rob Popfin, and there's loads of brilliant talks of Rob giving talks. So now I've got 30 minutes of audio to kind of clone Rob's voice. Now, I appreciate outside of Jamf, you don't know who Rob is, you don't know what he sounds like. So let me play, and hopefully you'll be able to hear this, a 20-second clip of what Rob sounds like from a YouTube video.
Cool thing to point out with Viable is that there is a version that is a complete lockdown version. You're late. No, a complete lockdown version that lets you basically run kind of security testing in it, and it really is a complete lockdown sandbox. UTM, on my poll for the...
I can't actually hear that live, so I have no idea, but I'm assuming it worked. So I'm just gonna... so Rob got a lovely Canadian accent, quite recognizable in terms of like at Jamf, you can kind of know it's Rob calling you. So that's what he sounds like legitimately. This is what he sounds like, his voice clone.
Hello everyone, it's Rob here. Isn't Adam amazing? Wow. Oh, one more thing. I love maple syrup almost as much as I love working for Jamf. Have a great day.
So pretty convincing. It's hard to believe he wouldn't say that in real life. That was the voice clone, but that is what Rob sounds like. So let's now play this out in an attack scenario. So full disclosure, before this video plays, one, I'm not an actor, so don't judge my acting skills. And two, I'm not a video editor as well, so again, don't judge those skills. But hopefully you'll enjoy this.
Hey Adam, it's Rob. Hope all is okay with you, mate. I've just got you on loudspeakers. We're dealing with some issues in the office right now. Sorry to bother you, but we've detected some suspicious activity on your Microsoft account. I'm sending you a verification link right now via SMS. You should see it come through. I need you to click that and confirm your credentials so we can secure the account. This is pretty urgent.
Oh, hey, Rob. Yeah, no problem. Let me just... Yeah, I can see the text come through now.
Perfect, you should have it now. Just enter your email and password like normal. I'll wait while you do that.
All right, logging in now.
Great, and just confirm the MFA code when it comes through. Standard security verification.
I don't know if you can notice, but the Microsoft domain, we just swapped the I for the L, so really tricky to spot that. This isn't my real password, so you can take a picture of this.
Okay. Done. Is that all good?
Perfect. I can see that went through on our end. Your account is secured now. Thanks for sorting that so quickly, Adam. Cheers. Have a great day.
No worries. Cheers, Rob. Bye.
Fairly basic demo, but hopefully you get the idea in terms of like, if I receive that text message in isolation, I'm probably not going to click it. I'm not one of those 1 in 10. But remember, 1 in 10 users did click the link. But if I receive that text message and I get a phone call at the same time, and that phone call sounds pretty convincing and it's guiding me through the steps, then that 1 in 10 numbers maybe going to be slightly higher. Again, you could sort of argue in terms of like, are you still using MFA codes, or are you using other forms of authentication? Are you kind of moving towards a passwordless approach? And maybe that's sort of what you should be doing anyway. But the kind of point remains, that is one example of how they might leverage that, but it's not always it's not always mobile either. It could be that they are phoning you up and actually saying, hey, can you do something on your laptop for me? I need you to kind of like modify some settings or download an application or whatever it might be. But this is the difficulty for a user. They cannot necessarily always tell the difference. It's a trusted voice. Like I said, phone call from a CEO, suspicious. Phone call from someone in IT, yeah, I expect that. It's a trusted channel. Again, like I'm used to receiving a phone call from that individual. And the context kind of makes sense as well. Like, hey, we're doing some testing, or there's been a security incident. Can you help us out? So it's very difficult for a user to kind of spot that. And maybe for those of you that are in the kind of security awareness or training for your employees, might want to kind of think about how you can sort of incorporate this into your overall training and messaging. So how do we defend against it? Firstly, detecting a live voice clone is very difficult. I haven't seen any technologies that have the ability to do it there and then. So really the kind of protection and defend against it is what happens next after someone's sort of had their voice cloned and been attacked. A couple of things that are recommended, some actual real simple but effective ways to do it. You can make a policy internally that if someone from IT or someone calls you asking you to give a password or sensitive information over the phone, either like you do with like banks, hang up, call them back on a trusted number, or make it mandatory that a third party also has to be involved in that phone call. So again, just create a sense of trust behind that. NCSC also have some really useful information, as well as the FBI, in terms of how to protect against these types of attacks. There is some features within iOS and Android that you can leverage. iOS has the ability, and similar to Android, where if a phone call is from an untrusted number, the person now has to tell you like who they are and why they're calling. Like, it's mainly to protect against like cold calls, so you know if someone's cold calling you, and it doesn't really provide adequate protection because the attacker could use the AI voice cloning to be like, it's Rob from Jamf, so it's quite difficult there. But there are some features if you enroll those iOS and Android devices into device management that can harden it and make it harder for an attacker to exploit. The kind of easiest thing to do to protect against these type of attacks is to have some form of mobile phishing protection. So I'm sure everyone here has built-in email phishing protection, so most likely you're not getting lots of phishing emails that are being sent or delivered through to the user. If you're getting a load of email phishing attacks, the likelihood is that you're also getting them on SMS, you just don't know about it. So having some form of protection there, whether it's an SMS filtering sort of tool, but the challenge is a lot of mobile phishing attacks aren't just sent via SMS. We're increasingly seeing them sent via like WhatsApp. In Germany, there was a big issue recently with Signal was being used to target German government organizations with phishing messages sent via Signal. So you need to then have some form of protection against phishing after they click the link. So whether that's built-in sort of device content filtering, security, network security controls, definitely would recommend having those capabilities built in. But there are some features that if you have your devices managed in some form of UEM, mobile device management, whether that's enforcing latest operating system versions, locking down access via per-app VPNs or IP lockdown. Again, these are policies that I'd recommend you kind of implement. So if you had a mobile security solution in place to protect against what the attack I demoed with Rob, when the attack came through and I clicked the link, the phishing credential, the link that I tried to go to would have been blocked. So immediately I would have been on the phone to the AI bot being like, hang on a minute, that link's just been blocked. Now again, they could be really sophisticated and train the AI bot to then negotiate somehow to kind of go, oh yeah, that's normal, try go to this domain. However, you'd like to think users, if the site is blocked initially, they're not going to power through and kind of commit to it. However, if they do power through and still go away and give credentials, what you can then do, and this is what Jamf does, is you can gate access to company resources on a mobile device to only allow trusted mobile devices to connect to your company resources. So all your mobile applications, you can create a policy that it has to be a device that's enrolled into Jamf and using a certain IP, which we would give you a dedicated IP to ensure that if any traffic is coming from a mobile device to your company data, it's a device that you know about and it is protected and secured in the right manner. Here's just a visual of what that would have looked like if they had the Jamf application running on their device to protect against the phishing link. So these are kind of what we recommend every mobile security program should have in terms of 4 steps to secure your mobile fleet. Firstly, have something in place that gives you the ability to harden the mobile device, whether that's adhering to a certain compliance policy, whether that's ensuring that it's always on a minimum OS version, so only allow applications to be downloaded from certain app stores, whatever it might be in terms of getting that in place first of all. Then you want to have some form of attack prevention, so whether it's on-device content filtering that we provide at Jamf, or sort of blocking access through like a private browser or SMS filtering. Thirdly, securing your access, so then sort of having the ability to ensure that only trusted devices can access business critical resources, whether that's through zero trust network access or per app VPNs. And the last point is, and this is something that Jamf does really well and it's quite unique in terms of our capabilities, is we also have a additional mobile forensics tool that gives you a lot more deeper and richer telemetry from the mobile device that gives you a clearer picture of whether a compromise is either happening or could potentially happen if there is a known vulnerability that an attacker might look to exploit in the future. And again, sort of, it's really important to understand not every device needs the same security protection. Your everyday user, you might need to just kind of have the basic policies. They're on a minimum OS version and their phishing protections are blocked. Your more advanced or sort of high-level users that have access to very sensitive information, that's also maybe where you want to implement additional security, whether that is having pulling logs from that device and analyzing those logs at a deeper level, either sort of every day or periodically, in addition to the kind of everyday protection that they would need. So that is my presentation, and we're more or less on time. So believe it or not, it's like I planned that. If you do want to find out more, I'm going to be hanging around here, but Jamf is on stand E120. So please do come over. You'll see Jamf colleagues wearing a nice blue t-shirt. If you want to speak to us about anything that I've spoken about today on the mobile side, but also if you have Apple or Mac or Android in your estate, love to speak to you. But thank you all for your time and attention this afternoon.